joined the crew. I was 17, and I thought I knew what this life would mean. With my brothers all three, my uncles and my dad, we fished George's Bank like our ancestors had. Over time I saw what a man should know about the brazen law of the depths below, and the rage of the gales and the waves of destiny that break off the shoals with the souls of the sea. Who understands how each reckoning unfolds? Lift up your hands for the souls of the sea. When our time had come, we were heading home. We were running from a vicious winter storm, and we prayed and we wailed for our wives and families, and how we rest off the shores with the souls of the sea. Who understands how each reckoning unfolds? Lift up your hands for the souls of the sea, of the sea. Those at home who wait are forever bound to the shades of fate and their longing sound. When the waves and the wind in a mournful harmony resound off the shores with the souls of the sea. Resound off the shores with the souls of the sea. Yeah! Thank you, thank you, thank you. And welcome to our show, ladies and gentlemen. This is Local Music Scene. I'm your host, Allen Estes. We have a special show for you tonight. This is our Souls of the Sea show. And I'd like to introduce to you Frank Tedesco and Joe Langen. And myself, we are all part of the Souls of the Sea project. My co-producer, Peter Van Ness, is going to be talking with us about how it all started and where it's all come to and where it's all going. So, Peter, take on over, buddy.
Well, I want to start with, what are the Souls of the Sea? How did this happen? How did you become inspired to write these songs? But starting with, what are the Souls of the Sea?
Well, the Souls of the Sea, the way I conceived them initially, and Alan and I talked a lot about this, was all the lost fishermen from Gloucester. And over the years, with some of the videos we've done with Joe, there's a great feeling that these souls are still part of the community, very much so. and that people feel this and they're very serious about it. So then, as that evolved, the idea of the souls of the sea are not just the lost souls, but also the people that have that empathy and understanding for what the souls really mean and what they are. They are also the souls of the sea. It's this great community.
And how did that sense come to a song? The first song that you wrote, which was the Where'd They Go?
Well, Frank used to come see me play at places like the Realm Line, and said, you know, I write lyrics, and I love your melodies, and I love, you know, like your singing, and so would you take a look at my lyrics, and maybe we could collaborate? So I said, sure, you know.
Well, actually, I thought you were a
before.
terrible singer, but I thought you were only
Okay,
kidding.
well, you know, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. So anyways, so I took a look at his lyrics, and actually we wrote a couple of songs before we started doing the Souls of the Sea. But it was right around the time when, you know, when Sebastian Younger was you know, working on The Perfect Storm and all that sort of thing. And we were all, of course, the community was very involved in that. And we just started kind of toying with the idea and came up with Where'd They Go, and that was the real start of it. That was the first time, I think, speaking for both of us, that we really felt like we got something here. And it ended up becoming the official song of the city, you know.
Did you sit down and write this together? I mean, did you send him stuff and he sent you stuff? Were you in the same room? How did, you know, was this like Lennon and McCartney? I mean, how did this work?
Well, you know, I focus more on the music. Frank focuses more on the lyrics.
Yeah.
We combine the two together when we do the finalizing of the song. When we feel like the song's 80% done, those we always get together for. But I'll put on tape a melodic idea. He'll ride around with us in his car and study it and study it and study it and start getting an idea of how he wants the lyric, the phrasing, the inner rhymes and things to go, right? And that's
Pretty much. I mean, and with Alan's gift of composition, I would say, you know, this song needs a little bridge, a little break here, and then, you know, it takes him 5 minutes, and he comes up with this incredible thing that will hold it all together. So, you know, it's I think it worked well because Alan really allowed me to come into this world because I was not in the music business. I love music and everything, and I play a little bit, but you know, Alan had been in it so long, and then as we started collaborating, I really got to appreciate what a really good composer and singer can do with lyrics, and so this was really part of you know, the collaboration that we had, and I really enjoyed it. But then, as Alan said, when we did Where'd They Go, it was a tribute really to you know, the families mainly who, what do they say when there's a sinking, and the first thing I think people might say is where'd they go? You know, what happens to those fishermen that are out there and they're lost forever? And back in the day, there was no communication, so people would be here waiting, and they would wait for years, and literally generations. Those stories stayed with them, and I believe part of the lore of the souls is that those spirits of them, or their longing, if you will, is still there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, and Gloucester knows this better than anybody. Any fishing port, especially someone, you know, as old as Gloucester, most people they get to bury their dead. You know, they get to do a burial and the proper thing. People here don't know when they're lost at sea where it actually happened or whatever, so they throw flowers into the water, and you know, and it's a whole different ballgame.
It's sad, but it's beautiful. There is a spirit of hope against hope, of optimism, and within the suffering, and all the great women, the widows that had taken care of their families when their men had been lost, because it was
the dedication is incredible.
But just the faith of holding things together, which I kind of realized after talking and through some of Joe's videos. I mean, it really, in a sense, is a matriarchal society, because the men were out fishing all the time, and it was really the women that ran things and kept things going.
And we have
that's not true anymore, of course.
Right.
We
have that video,
Yes.
which we want to show, the video that Joe made of the song when it was and before it was dedicated as the.
Well, and Roger
official-
Ward did all
Roger-
the camera
right,
work.
Roger,
One of
yeah,
our
right.
camera
One of our
guys
camera-
here tonight.
did all the camera
And this was first thing I ever did here in the studio. A lot of this was shot in the studio, so this goes way back, and we got the studio got flooded with calls and requests and stuff, and so we knew we had something there, which led to, it was back when Bruce Toby was the mayor.
Right.
And,
Yes.
and he said, you know, we should maybe think about making this the official song of the city. So they held a,
City council meeting, yeah.
Yeah.
And they voted it.
voted unanimously,
I
yeah.
would like to add, though, that when we did the song, and it was very well received, and it was my wife, Sally, that suggested that we should make a video of this. And, you know, we had never done a video before, so we kind of put it together and edited, and we did it right here in the studio over about a 3-4 month period.
And around town, we did
Yeah.
some outdoor
Right.
shots and stuff. Yeah, it was.
Well, let's see it.
Yeah, let's
We
watch
have it here.
This is Captain Magnuson speaking on the Trawler Heckler. We're docking about 5:30 tomorrow morning. We have on board 110,000 pounds of haddock, 30,000 of scrod, 25,000 of cod, 2,000 of halibut. What do you think the price is going to be in the morning?
There's a way that some men go out beyond the harbor's glow, trying to make a living from the sea. But when bitter northerns blow, people in the harbor know life is in the hands of destiny. Oh, the cries and the pleas of the women on their knees, praying that their missing fishermen come home. How they howl and they wail for the Andrea gale and the 1,000 sunken fishing boats below. Where'd they go? Where'd they go? But the raging seas refuse to unveil the fatal news, so the broken hearts forever long to know. Fishermen of Gloucester go where the winds of fortune blow, and danger is a sober certainty. And nature brings its tempters low, reaping what they didn't sow. It's the toll for harvesting the sea. Oh, the cries and the pleas of the women on their knees, praying that their missing fishermen come home. How they howl and they wail for the Andrea gale and the 1,000 sunken fishing boats below. Where'd they go? Where'd they go? And they gather at the church when they've given up the search. Now the loved ones left behind will never know. Generations keep harboring hope. Holy church candles burn. Only widows wearing black dresses yearn, longing to learn where they go. Where they go. Daring souls will always go out beyond the harbor's glow, where courage meets its opportunity. The lonesome foghorns call from home, beacon search the great unknown, for they that go in ships down to the sea. Oh, the cries and the pleas of the women on their knees, praying that their missing fishermen come home. How they howl and they wail for the Andrea gale and 1,000 sunken fishing boats below. they go? Where'd they go? Where'd they go? Where'd they go?
Okay, we'll be in about 5:30 in the morning.
Not bad, huh?
That goes back in time, huh? We got our own golden oldies.
And you can see that, by the way, folks, on the Gloucester Mass Visitors website, the official website, gloucesterma.com, and also on the Souls of the Sea website. You have it there. So you did this, you did the video, and then you felt like you had to keep going. I mean, it wasn't enough. So talk about that.
Well, the response
Yeah.
was so good. I mean, it inspired us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was a subject matter that has no bottom to it. I mean, it was endless. The stories. I mean, if you just do the math, I mean, if you have 10,000 fishermen lost at sea, how many families and members does that include, and how many stories go along with that over the generations? So it seemed like, you know, something that was very private. I mean, we didn't want to do anything that would, you know, offend people or in any way exploit it. I often said that this is not something for exploitation. It's something for telling a story that must be told. I mean, that's really what the Souls of the Sea is about. Yep. It's a big part of American history. It's part of Americana, and it's really very little known outside of, you know, Cape Ann. I mean, you can go to Danvers and they don't know anything about it. So part of what our thing was to sort of connect all the parts, the pieces, in an artistic way, not to be presumptuous, because, you know, I don't come from a fishing family, and I never, and you know, Alan and I talked about this. We did not want to say this is what we think it is, but try to present this great American story over the centuries as with the respect and dignity that it deserves, especially for the families who went through so much. But it's an inspiring story, and that's why I say it is a story that must be told.
So, Joe, how did you get involved in this? And you had that sense. I mean, you can feel it coming through the video that Frank was just talking about, a story that must be told, a dedication in some sense, an honor, an homage. How did you feel about doing this?
Well, first of all, that video I really didn't have anything to do with. That was Roger Wood and Bob McClinchy, I think.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, they did that. My background is not like music videos, that type of thing. But when I left New York and I was coming back to live up in this area, I reconnected with Frank about what he was doing and played all the music for me, and saw Allen perform it a few times, and and then the more I heard about it and the more I saw it, the more it became apparent that a lot of these people that were involved with these, had real stories to tell. And so then we talked about, well, what do we do with this, in terms of television? And I think, the logical thing to me was to go out and interview people and just let them talk. And, let the story go wherever it was going to go.
Interspersed with the music,
Right,
kind of like
right.
keeping it all like in the loop. Yep.
And we'll see some of that in the some of those interviews in the second half
Yeah.
of the show, and it really.
But it's more or less like the music was based on these stories and these people.
Yeah.
And then when you start talking to the people, I think in some cases it actually inspired a few more songs
Right.
that these guys
So talk about some of
wrote.
those new songs. I mean, you're going to play a couple more, but what are you have the Souls of the Sea, you have the Where'd They Go. What was the next song you wrote?
Down to the Sea. And then Allen kept coming up with these killer melodies, and I couldn't help myself. We did a song I really enjoy. It's called "Man Overboard," and it was at that point, and we'll talk about the musical play later, that I began thinking of scenes from that. I said this really needs to be put into a format where a story, a fictional story, is told that will sort of tell this. And I felt "Man Overboard" as an allegory. Somebody, how would that work within a musical play?
You
And it
always
was
had that in
point.
the back of your mind.
Oh, yeah.
But in the meantime, what we were doing is we started doing a little researching, and we started looking,
Right.
and we started, like reading, like Joe Garland's book, The Lone Voyager.
Right.
And wow, I mean, here we.
Here's the true story.
And
that you could-
if we're going to write a CD's worth of material about Gloucester and Cape Ann, then certainly something's got to be in there about
Howard
Joe.
Blackburn.
Howard Blackburn.
Right.
So we started thinking about that and there and things, and we just, I'd give Frank a melody. We'd start playing around with an idea of and then we started seeing some articles in the papers and stuff like that, which we'll talk a little bit later in the
Yeah.
show about and stuff, and just feeling this stream of this ever-evolving kind of thing. And both of us live near a cemetery over in East Gloucester, where you walk through that cemetery and you see these guys that were very young that are probably not actually buried there, but their graves are there, and their wives are buried beside them 50 years later, because that's what they did, is they never gave up hope. They raised their children without the father, but it was and it's just so unique to Cape Ann and to Gloucester.
So tell about what it was about the story of Howard Blackburn that got you going and that got you to write such an incredibly inspiring song. I mean,
Well, you should read The Lone Voyager. You can't put it down to the first 100 pages. You cannot put that thing down. What that guy survived is nothing short of an absolute miracle.
Yeah.
And his dedication to the dead man that was sitting.
Well, I think that's what's so fascinating about it is, a question in our society today where everything is sort of situational and what's good for me and how can I gain. Howard Blackburn was in a dory, as all the folks in this room know and some people watching may or may not, is that they were lost at sea in a dory, which is a two-man big rowboat where they used to catch their fish out away from the mothership. They were lost in a big winter storm. His dory mate eventually froze to death, and the question was, well, why didn't he just dump him over? I mean, he was 60 to 80 miles away from shore in the middle of the storm.
200-pound guy would have lightened his load
when they asked Howard Blackburn why he didn't, he said, "Well, I thought if we made it, what would I say to his folks? That I dumped him overboard? I mean, that's character. I mean, if we're going to go, we're going to go together. It's kind of an amazing issue of character when you're out there on the sea all by yourself, and to make that kind of calculation that I'm staying with him because I don't ever want to face his parents and say that to save myself, I threw the son's body overboard. So he was going to bring him back, and he did. And so that's the kind of story you hear so much that is inspiring, and I believe it really is the essence of the true American spirit. And what's so great about Gloucester is that all through the years, you found the new immigrants coming and going into this very difficult profession, and all of them coming into a one. And you can just look on the cenotaph the early English and Scottish, and then the Portuguese and the Irish and the Italians, right up through the present day. So it really is truly a melting pot, always has been, and you're always worth what you can do. When you're on a fishing boat, you don't get paid. You get a share of the catch after expenses. If you don't make expenses, you don't get paid. Now, if you think there's ever a gold brick on a fishing boat, there's just no way that happens. It's the true, the last bastion of true American entrepreneurship and ingenuity and quick thinking and trying to make money in a way that puts a lot at risk. And I think it's truly an American story.
And you took that and made it almost an allegory for your life. I mean, if you listen to the words and feel the music, let's hear it.
The Howard Blackburn song?
Yeah.
Okay. We call this Not With Your Hands. My name's Howard Blackburn. I was lost for days at sea in a winter storm in my trawling made in 1883. With frostbit hands I rode for land 60 miles away. Poor Tom, before he froze to death, had nothing good to say. He said, Howard, you won't make it to shore. There ain't no power in your hands anymore. But I said one thing this survivor understands: you row with your heart, not with your hands. You row with your heart, not with your hands. Hey! Well, I lost all my fingers, half of both my thumbs. I ran around to Gloucester Bar for fishermen's and bums. I bragged I'd sailed to Europe in a tiny sloop alone. They laughed until I did it twice and broke their scoffing tone. They said, Howard, you shouldn't sail anymore. There ain't no power in your hands like before. But I said one thing this survivor understands: yeah, you sail with your heart, but not with your hands. You sail with your heart, but not with your hands. Hey! Their cutting words will keep you down on your knees like a foul mutating disease. Pessimism is deceiving, so you gotta keep believing to overcome belligerencies. I trekked around the continent, searching fame and gold. I failed and they all said I was too reckless, rash, and bold. But I was just a salty Gloucesterman who would not turn up dead, who heard refrains of victory instead of what they said. They said, Howard, you shouldn't dream anymore. There ain't no power in a man who's not whole. But I said one thing this survivor understands: yeah, you dream with your heart, not with your hands. You dream with your heart, not with your hands. And I said one thing this survivor understands: yeah, you dream with your heart, not with your hands. Hey! Howard, you're listening.
Hey.
Incredible, an absolutely incredible thing. And the idea for that song is simply what Howard Blackburn did is humanly impossible. He did not do it with his hands. His hands were frozen to the oars. the skin was falling off of his hands like frostbitten, and there was no way humanly he could have made it.
Amazing.
Yep.
Well, this is the second half.
Yes, folks, we
of
would
our
like
show.
to welcome you back to the second portion of our show. We are doing Souls of the Sea Part 2. And with us tonight is Frank Tedesco and Joe Langen. And I'm your host, Allen Estes, although tonight your host is really going to be Peter Van Ness, my co-producer. You're watching Local Music Scene for you out there on television land, and we're glad that you can join us. And if you have missed the first half of our show, it'll be being aired again eventually, so maybe you do second, first, second, that kind of thing. Welcome back, guys. Peter?
Hey, well, what an inspiring song. And after you wrote that, you just couldn't stop, right? I mean, you put together a band. I mean,
Well, you got to understand something. I go out and I play that live here in Gloucester, and people love it.
Yeah.
I mean, the response that we got from that just is inspiration enough alone just to know what we're doing. And one of the most wonderful thing is one of our biggest fans is Joe Garland. He just
great.
loves that song, and he shows up whenever he can, and
Yeah.
with his wife, and they just love that song. And so we feel like if nothing else ever happens, that's success, right, Frank?
Well, I remember when we had a work tape of that song, and I thought I would play it for Joe. I was over at his house, and when he heard the line, "You row with your heart, not with your hands," he just looked at me and he goes, "Good line." And it is a good line, because I think the whole essence of the song is encapsulated in that. And that's really, again, the spirit of Gloucester was what that is all about.
so
Absolutely.
you put together a band, though, after this. I mean, you were playing most of these things solo or with a smaller group, but not a specific band that went out and made CDs. Now you want to put the band together. How's that happen?
Well, I have a band, and while we're working on the CD, we're bringing all of my musician friends and people that
Right.
and they're starting to learn Frank and my songs.
Yeah.
And so we're working in the studio, and some of them, are just like, people that would come in and do a part, and other
Yeah.
people are saying, wow, if you guys ever go out on the road and want to do this, we'd like to be a part of it, right?
Yes.
So that's kind of how it all started that way. And people started saying, well, we'd love to have Souls of the Sea, that as being the band.
Yeah.
And in the very beginning, I was sort of fronting the band, but then Fly Amaro came into the picture, and he was also working on the production of the record.
Right.
And some of the songs were meant for female singers, so we had artists, Flavel,
Yeah.
Linda Blaze, people like that singing. So all of a sudden, we had this troupe of like 8 people in this band, like playing these songs, and
And I want to go back to this, the interviews that you were talking about, Joe, and you went out. How many hours did you film? How many people did you film? How did this become eventually the Corinthian interview, and then the rest of the work?
Well, we just started filming different people that Frank had met and other people had suggested. And just one interview sort of led to another.
Did you see a theme? Did you see a...
Well, what happens is you start talking to people that all have something in common.
Yeah.
And then certain themes begin to emerge. That people sort of talk about the same thing. And
Which was?
Well, different things, like it became obvious that most of the people who lived this life where they went out on these fishing boats all the time, especially back in the time when they used to go out for a week, 2-3 weeks at a time. They were superstitious, for example, fatalistic, very religious, and then beyond that, those are sort of the surface things that that you see in people, but. Then beyond that, then it also became obvious that, one of the things that eventually became a song is the fact that these people never complained. So whatever they were telling you about, they were never telling you about it like, oh, and we, this happened to us, or this happened to me, or it was just very matter of fact.
Well, let's see some of that. We have it's a clip that you brought in.
Well, this particular one was the Corinthian.
This
It's
is-
Jerry Noble.
Yeah.
The story is about Jerry Noble.
Yeah.
And Allen, performs that song all the time, and they wrote that song.
Yeah.
And when I heard it, I remember saying, "Wow, that's really an amazing story." If you just listen to the song.
Yeah.
And then Frank said, "Well, he's still alive, and because this thing took place back in 1949."
Yeah.
And I said, "Really?" Yeah. And he's living in Florida, so Roger and I went down to Florida and actually interviewed him.
Great. Well, let's see that.
Yeah.
Can we have a look?
Yeah, we always dedicate this to the Noble family.
To the Nobles.
Noble electricians.
And he's still alive, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, he just Steve just and Jerry just got out of the nursing home.
Really?
Yeah.
Good.
So they're looking forward to him driving again.
Oh, good, good.
And one thing that I think that I would love if you would share with the audience, Frank, was that this always made me feel good, that after we wrote the song, that you said to me, we have to make a pact, Alan, the only way that we're going to play this song is.
Oh yeah, if the Noble family is okay with it, and so Alan knew Steve and one of the other kids, and so got a copy of the work tape over them. I said, if they don't like it, we're not going any further with it. And then you can tell them what happened. They were sitting around. They called Alan, and they were all crying, and they said, "We love it."
Yeah.
So from that
At a
point,
barbecue, they all listened to it.
yeah, they really liked it. So
Well, maybe we can make the audience cry. Let's see if we can put this on.
The Corinthian.
The Corinthian.
Not far off the coast of Nova Scotia, Corinthian lay in the fog. No sign of the coming disaster, a young sailor wrote in his log.
In fishing communities like Gloucester, it was common for generations of the same family to work the boats side by side. One of these was the Noble family. Captain Jerome Noble, on the left, skippered the schooner Corinthian. His son, Jerry Jr., on the right, joined the crew soon after returning from fighting in the Pacific during World War II, aboard the carrier USS Franklin. Jerry's beloved grandfather, George Hemian, was also a crew member on the Corinthian. A lifelong fisherman, he once worked as a Gloucester doryman. Following another long-time Gloucester tradition, George Hemian helped raise his grandson, while Jerry's father was away for long weeks on the Grand Banks. As Jerry Jr. grew into manhood, he and his grandfather became very close.
My grandfather was the type of fellow who bought me my first bike, bought me my first cart, and bought me my first car. And he and I made a trip down to Nova Scotia together. We were good buddies, real good friends. He was just always there. He was just always there for me.
In mid-September 1949, Jerry Noble's father and grandfather, with 8 other crew members, took the Corinthian on a routine trip to the Grand Banks to catch redfish.
We were fishing off of Halifax. We were about 63 miles off of Halifax. It was a heavy sea running and a heavy fog. And we were pulling the nets back in, and the ship was laying idle in the water as they were trying to get the nets in. We heard this horn in the distance, and my father answered. You could hear the noise coming nearer and nearer, and every time the guy would blast, it seemed like he was right next to you. All of a sudden, he came out of the fog, and it looked just like a great big skyscraper. And he come rushing right where I was. And I had sense enough to take off my jacket and unsnap my dungaree pants or so that the snaps were off. Prior to being picked up, my grandfather came floating by, and I held him out of the water for quite a period of time. Jack and I figured maybe a half an hour, but it probably was only 10 or 15 minutes. But Jack kept telling me, he's dead, you might as well let him go, because you're more underwater now than before, yourself, you'll drown. So I had to let him go, and it was very hard for me to do that.
When he came in, he had tears in his eyes, and I knew that he held him up for quite a while. I don't know, he said 15 minutes, but I heard a half an hour at first, that he tried to keep him. And that other fella on the raft said, you have to let go, he is dead,
I think my grandfather was more interested in protecting me, because Manley Goodix said he's seen him running aft. And of course, if you ran, because he was on the forward gallus on the port side, and I was on the after gallus. And of course, I think that he ran aft to get to me, and he ran into that freighter. And I think that's what killed him. Yeah.
Oh, rest your soul. Your grandson made it home. He made it home.
Very difficult. Yeah. Yeah, that was a very difficult time. I think of it once in a while. I think of the detail. If there was something else I could have done or something like that. There was nothing I could have done. Everything happened so fast, and it was just a matter of survival. And I don't think anybody could have done anything different. The freighter just came out of nowhere and hit us. Yeah. So there was nothing you could do, nothing you could have done differently. Just a matter of survival. Yeah. Yeah. Huh. Eyes water a lot. I gotta get them. Gotta get them fixed.
Not far off the coast of Nova Scotia, Corinthian lay in the fog.
Not far off the coast of Nova Scotia, Corinthian lay in the fog. No sign of the coming disaster. A young sailor wrote in his log. They were aft on the nets, slowly hauling. At the bow did his grandfather stand. The captain gave signals and warnings, but destiny heeds no command. Oh, freighter hit Corinthian and cut her right in two. 6 fishermen were lost that day. It was more than half the crew. And among them was his grandpa, who was killed before he knew. If the good Lord let his grandson make it through. The Corinthians sailed out of Gloucester, where fate is the fisherman's friend. Just one of 1,000 disasters the faithful abide till the end. The Corinthian met with ill fortune in the fog a half a century ago. But Gloucester will honor forever the men who were lost down below. War freighter hit Corinthian, cut her right in two. 6 fishermen were lost that day, it was more than half the crew. And among them was his grandpa, who was killed before he knew if the good Lord let his grandson make it through. Whoa, rest your soul. Your grandson made it home, he made it home. Whoa, rest your soul. Your name is on the monument, your love for him is known. A freighter hit Corinthian and cut her right in two. 6 fishermen were lost that day, more than half the crew. And among them was his grandpa, who was killed before he knew that the good Lord let his grandson make it through. Not far off the coast of Nova Scotia, Corinthian lay in the fog. No sign of the coming disaster. A young sailor wrote in his log.
You know, we've seen right here essentially the role of art in bringing this story to us and the feeling to within us. I mean, you have the video and the interview, you have the book that Joe Garland wrote, and this incredible song that, you know, making me cry. I gotta be on TV, I can't cry. And then you take it to another art form. I mean, out of all these songs and this video and these stories and this world comes a play. Tell us about that.
Well, you know, about at some point I started thinking about the possibility, and was talking it over with Alan and even with Joe too, about how do we take this music that people seem to really respond to and put it in and try to tie a story together, a simple story with the music. So we began writing songs that I felt were going to be scenes in this story. And so that's our songwriting after that took a different tack as I was working on the story. And I remember I had the draft done. I went over it several times, walking Good Harbor Beach, trying to put this all together, reading an awful lot about writing. And I had written a few things in the past, but nothing like this. It was quite an undertaking. But then I remember I finally brought it over to Joe Garland. I had him to read it. He was working on his memoir from World War II at the time. So I left it with him. He called me back and he says, "You got to take this to Nan Weber." And we did. And Joe and I went up to visit Nan after she had read it. And she was notorious with her red pen, you know, striking out, you know. And so she said, I got a phone call from her. Said, "Frank," she goes, "I want to talk to you about the souls of the sea." I said, "Well, all right." So we went up, and when we went there, she hadn't changed anything. She said, "This is great, and it's all about Gloucester, and it's about the Gloucester women, isn't it?" And I said, "Well, I didn't set out that way, but that's really what it is." And so she performed it with her theater in the Pines, and it was really a great 4 performances, and 2,000 people actually attended, and some of them a couple of times. So it was very successful there. I then took it from there, and it later, since then, has been actually published by a national publisher. So it's had quite a history. And this is now, they're a worldwide publisher, and we're getting, interest from all over, as I was telling Alan, from different universities, theater companies, repertory theaters, and so forth. So hopefully there'll be a lot of productions of The Souls of the Sea.
And you made a video that's kind of a preview of the play, a little trailer, sort
Yeah,
of?
what we did was the great production that was put on by Theater in the Pines, many local people who including
A lot of people here were at that.
Father Garibaldi was in it, and so wasn't Rick Dowsett and many others. And so we took some clips of that and we kind of compiled them into a little video preview, which is also on our website, and it's on the Dramatic Publishing Company's website as well.
Great,
So-
let's see that.
What do you think goes on around here? What do you think goes on while they're out there rustling up adventure out there?
I don't know.
Well, you ought to know. You hang around enough.
The legends of fishermen way out on the sea are glorious stories of brave destiny.
Our lady up there isn't deaf as a haddock, you know.
What? Oh, Noah.
She understands. She hears.
That's enough.
It's not what you say, it's what's in your heart that matters.
There's nowhere else in the country, there's nowhere else in the land, where on Christmas Day you'll feel so unguardedly grand. Sing a song on this Christmas in Gloucester for all the lost souls of the sea. There's nothing wrong with eccentric behavior in the name of their sweet memory. We are waiting and believing for the day they will return. We are waiting and believing as our vigil candles burn. We are bound by our devotion to the missing of the ocean.
What's in The Souls of the Sea is we actually have the Lost Fishermen. You can see them in their sou'westers. Well, those act as in traditional Greek theater, you have the Greek chorus. Well, this is what they do. They don't, the characters don't see them, and you pick that up pretty quickly, but they tell part of the story through what they do and actually interact with some of the characters as the story unfolds. So I think it's a good concept, but it really is just trying to be true to the way it is here, as the people actually believe and feel those lost fishermen with them.
Well, the souls are the ghosts, right?
They are the souls.
Yeah,
Yes.
the souls.
And so you got that element too, the haunting, which happens here. I mean, people just don't forget, I mean, it stays with families forever.
I don't like the term ghosts, though, because ghost sort of has a connotation that there's something spooky or anything else. This is a very natural human thing that that we found with people, so that there is the spirits or the souls
okay, fine.
that are connected, and I believe, in my own personal view, it is actually all that longing on both sides, from out there and here, that it's there, and I believe that it exists in this place, in this country at this time, and will for some time to come.
Yeah, and I think that really came through in the play, that you have this sense of longing, but you also have this sense of triumph. I mean, I remember the way that we promoted it as 10,000 lost fishermen, but love, loss, and triumph.
Right.
And,
Yes.
And there's something about that feeling that of the souls that brings us all together, in a sense, and that came through the play, I thought.
Well, again, it was trying to be true to what's happening, and then to build a story to show the two sides. You know, there is this. It's a blue collar. It's a rough and ready community. You know, nobody's perfect here, and yet there's this other side that's very deeply spiritual and is connected in a very real way to something I think is very beautiful. And I think there is an answer there for our society, where there's this hope against hope, and this sort of selfless faith, and just that story about Howard Blackburn of not wanting to do something. That's character, and that's really what the Souls of the Sea is about. It's about character.
And you've got one more song for us tonight that sort of portrays
kind of
that
our wrap-up
character.
song.
Good
Yes,
wrap-up
absolutely.
song.
And I guess we would like to do that now.
We need to do that now.
Well, I would like to thank Frank Tedesco,
Thanks,
Joe
Alan.
Langen,
Yeah.
and Peter. Thank you for helping on the stern today,
thank
as
you.
they say.
Yeah, on the
and
stern.
my name's Allen Estes, and you've been watching Local Music Scene, and we appreciate you viewing. And we like to say that we bring the music to you. And so we're on every week, so keep us in the loop, okay? Thanks again. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We Men of Gloucester. My father took me out to sea when I was 9 years old. My older brothers laughed at me for saying I was cold. I learned this lesson on the Main. We men of Gloucester don't complain. I left my true love on the shore to ply this trawling trade. She left me and I lost much more than ever I had made. Though broken hearts are racked with pain, we men of Gloucester don't complain. I saw the ghastly mountain waves, so merciless with might, send brave men to their watery graves to tread the endless night. Though most doomed souls cry out in vain, we men of Gloucester don't complain. My brothers and my dad, my Uncle Ezra too. I might conclude that life is bad to help me make it through, but no self-pity clouds my brain. We men of Gloucester don't complain. The hounds of hell can drop like rain. We men of Gloucester don't complain.